Hello, and today we're going to be doing a deep analysis of a matchup between Pete Buttigieg and J.D Vance. So let's start with Alaska, and then we're going to go all the way to Maine. Um, so Alaska probably, I'd say 13.2, probably because the rules shift right, and maybe even Juneau, but I think Anchorage shifts a little to the left. Not enough to make the state bluer, but um it's basically a dead count cat bounce, so and then Hawaii, I'd say around 21.7%, where Honolulu, Maui shift right, but the rest of the islands don't. They probably just stay stagnant. So it does shift it like 3 points to the right. Um, Washington 17 points, just because Seattle and uh the rest of the areas around Seattle are moving rightward, but the left part of the state, like Clallaham, Jefferson, Mason, Gray Harbor, Pacific, they're shifting bluer. So I think it would be a closer election. Just because Seattle is more populated, so the shifting would make it more red. So Oregon, 15.3%. Um, I'd see Portland moving very heavily to the left, and I think Tillamook will probably flip. So the first flipped county for Democrats. Um, California, I think it would probably be around a 17.6% margin. Um, Probably because of the Central Valley shifting heavily to the right and Los Angeles area shifting right, or an Orange County probably would flip in that scenario. And the Bay Area probably stays about the same. Maybe Sacramento shifts right. I just don't see them shifting right for J.D. Vance, especially after the Trump administration. But J.D. Vance still has a chance at the presidency. Um, Even in this prediction, I don't know. I'm just doing this off the fly, so I really don't know who wins. Um, so Nevada would probably be around a 4.6% margin because I think Reno would flip, but Las Vegas probably gets a little redder, but not red enough to make it like likely. Um, Idaho 37 points. Uh, Boise probably shifts a little to the left, but Idaho Falls counterbalances that, and so does I would guess, a Panhandle, I guess. Um, so yeah, Utah. This is where it shifts heavily to the left. 16.3% for the Republicans. Still safe, but uh, Utah County, Salt Lake County, Davis County, Summit, the areas around Salt Lake City shift heavily blue. Um, and yeah, that's why I think it is more competitive. Um, Arizona 7 points. I forgot to mention this, but I think Pete Buttigieg would underperform with Hispanics and underperform with blacks. So he wouldn't get as much of a turnout from Democratic Hispanics and blacks. Maybe even they might even flip to J.D. Vance. So, nothing against Pete Buttigieg, but he just isn't appealing to that type of voter. Um, Mojave, La Paz, Yuma shift heavily to the right. Phoenix probably stays around the same margin. and the rest of the state probably stays stagnant, maybe except for um, Pinal. Um, Montana, 20.1%. Um, Billings probably moves a little to the right. Uh, Lewis and Clark probably shifts leftward. Um, Flathead probably moves to the right by a little bit. Missoula probably moves left. And maybe even Deer Lodge might flip. So, yeah. Then in Wyoming, Casper and Cheyenne dictate the state, and, they're heavily Republican, so I don't see that ever happening where Wyoming flips, but it's probably a 47.6% margin. In Colorado, 13.2%. Um, Denver, Denver itself shifts left. Fort Collins, Boulder, Jefferson, but Pueblo and that area in the rural Hispanic counties shift right. Um, and you have my surprising flip of the day, New Mexico. I think since it's majority Hispanic and Hispanics are trending heavily to the right, or pol- polar, polarity, plurality. I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyways, it probably would go Republican just because how heavy Hispanic it is. The plurality is, I said it correctly, but the polarity of the um, of Hispanics in the state um, would just make it Republican. I think McKinley probably just right. Cibola probably goes to the Republican. Las Cruces probably goes to the Republican. Maybe even Grant County. Santa Fe, Albuquerque get closer. Sandoval probably shifts left, but that's just because it's a shifting left county, and then the rest state shifts right. So, um, and New Mexico is probably like a 0.2% margin. So not that big of a winning margin, but still good enough. I'm gonna speed run these: North Dakota, South Dakota. Nothing to really talk about. North Dakota is like 36.1% Republican, so South Dakota is like 30.3. Um, Nebraska at large, Nebraska's first, and Nebraska's third are safe. Actually, Nebraska's first is likely, just because it's how they drew it. It's shifting left, and then in Nebraska's second, it's likely. So Nebraska would at large would probably be 20, no, like 17 points, 17.4%. Kansas, um, Kansas is interesting. I think Kansas City would become solid for Democrats. Wichita probably shifts leftward, but Topeka probably flips, and maybe even Riley. But that makes the state more like a 15.4%, 15.5% margin. Um, and in Oklahoma, I it's obvious it's going to go to Republicans by at least 33 points, but my margin is like 34.8. In Texas, it's going to be safe, probably 15 points. We're going to do an in-depth dive of Texas. Montgomery, the Houston might flip. Fort Bend probably will flip. In this scenario, San Antonio gets closer. Fort Worth expands. J.D. Vance expands the margin in Fort Worth and Denton and Collin. and he does better in the Rio Grande Valley, and that will get him a 15.3% margin. Minnesota goes lean Democrat. This is where Pete Buttigieg probably performs better than other Democrats. He's not from California or anything, and he doesn't have to put a Midwestern on his ballot because he is from the Midwest. So Minneapolis probably shifts leftward. So does Ramsey, Dakota, Washington, but the rest of the state gets redder, even Duluth. Um, and it probably makes it around a 4.5% margin just because the more populated parts of the state shift to left, so it make it more blue, making it more blue. Iowa, pretty self-explanatory. Even though Pete Buttigieg won in Iowa, I don't see him winning it anymore because uh, just how much you see how much red there is. Donald Trump won it by like 220,000, so there's not a lot of room that you can get through in Iowa to win it. So probably a 12.2% margin. Missouri 21 21 points. St. Louis is losing population. Um, Kansas City is gaining, but it's getting more competitive, and Springfield probably moves right. So yeah, and then Arkansas, 31.4%. I think the whole state probably shifts right, especially these counties right around the Tennessee and Mississippi um, border, and it would probably be very safe. Louisiana, 23.8%. Probably Lafayette, New Orleans, um, probably shift rightward. So does the very heavily populated right counties, except for Jefferson Parish. I should say parishes. Um, I don't want to get sued. Um, Wisconsin probably goes tilt Democrat. Um, I think point 0.6% is fair. Um, Wisconsin, I think Milwaukee, Dane shift heavily left. So does Janesville, which is in Rock County. Um, Iowa County probably shifts left. Portage might flip, but it's not enough to win the state. Dork probably is more left, where left. Uh, Claire probably moves left, and so does La Crosse. So it makes the state more bluer. And in Illinois, probably a 9-point margin. Chicago probably shifts heavily to the right. So does the suburbs around it. And the rolls get very heavily Republican, making it very, very competitive. Maybe even some of the suburban counties might flip. In Michigan, uh, probably lean Republican because Detroit probably won't. You won't get that turnout with Pete Buttigieg, even though it's his home state. He probably does. He probably does worse than Kamala Harris just because Detroit probably doesn't turn out. Kent County and Washtenaw, in, and not even Ingham. I don't know how to say that. Flint probably move right. Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor probably move left, I should say. Um, the rest of the state gets redder, so I'd say 2.4% margin. And in Indiana, safe Republican, even though it's basically Pete Buttigieg's old home state. I don't see Indianapolis moving heavily to the left. Fort Wayne probably stays around the same. South Bend might even South Bend might get bluer, but Gary might get redder. And then Bloomington probably stays about the same, and then Evansville probably gets a little redder. So it's probably around a 20.2% margin. And then you have Kentucky, 29 points, I'd say, just because Louisville probably shifts heavily to the left. And the Cincinnati exurbs probably also move to the left. But the coal country probably stays stagnant. So, and then Tennessee, 3.5%, which would be very good for the Republicans. I think Knoxville, Chattanooga, the red parts of the state shift heavily right, and maybe even Nashville and Memphis. Memphis probably will move right. Black turnout will probably be low. Mississippi, uh, the red parts of the state, like Hattiesburg and uh, Biloxi, um, Tupelo, maybe even Jackson move heavily right, which would make it, I'd say, around a 25-point margin, 25.3. Um, and then we go to Alabama, which would probably be like 33.6%. Just because Birmingham, Montgomery, the Black Belt shifts very red, because they just don't turn out. Florida, I'd say Miami around the coast probably shifts heavily right, and so does the central part of the state. I think Tallahassee moves left, so does Jacksonville, probably even flips, but Palm Beach in turn flips for the Republicans. Um, so Florida will probably be like a 15-point margin, 15.2. Georgia, likely. I don't see him getting the turnout in Atlanta to win the state uh, by a tilt margin even, or even make it a lean margin, but uh, it'd probably be like 5.4%. Some do still turn out. Maybe even Savannah gets a little redder. I think the Atlanta suburbs get redder. The entire state gets redder except for like the like maybe Fayette County flips. But that's because of trends. So South Carolina probably like 18.1%. I just see Greenville, Spartanburg, moving right, but Columbia probably moves right too. But the coast might move a little left. In North Carolina, I'd say likely to. I think Durham doesn't turn out. Charlotte gets lower turnout. The rural states are heavily enthused for J.D. Vance and turnout, so it'd probably be like a 6.7% margin. That is not supposed to be a joke. I just realized that. Um, Ohio goes soft, safe Republican. Um, I think Cleveland, Akron don't turn out for uh, Pete. Um, maybe Dayton gets a little bluer, maybe even Toledo, but where the heavy African American percentage of voters are in Ohio, I don't know that if there's that much African Americans in Ohio, but there probably is still some. It makes it more red. So I'd say, since it's J.D. Vance's home state, it's probably 16.23% to the 0.2 to 3% more redder than what I said. Um, and then West Virginia, I'd say 44.7%. Charleston, Huntington, Wheeling go heavily red. Um, there's not really that many big counties in West Virginia, so and they're all red, so I don't see it ever flipping to Democrats. Now, let's speed run this because it's getting a little long. But first, we'll get to the swing states. Virginia, tilt Republican. I think Richmond doesn't turn out. Um, Norfolk either. Virginia Beach probably gets a little, probably flips. So does Chesapeake. Um, Chesterfield might even flip. Um, and the Hispanics in Nova probably shift right, and so do the blacks. So it's basically 0.4% for J.D Vance in Virginia. And the final swing state, Pennsylvania, does lean. I think Philadelphia shifts heavily to the right, so does Bucks. Even Delaware. Allentown probably flips. Lackawanna probably gets bluer, and Pittsburgh probably gets bluer too. But it makes it, but the rest of the state shifts heavily right. So that would make it around 2.9%. And then the rest of the states are safe. DC 80 points. Maryland, um, I could see uh, one of these counties flipping back to the Dems. Maybe Kent County. And it would probably be around a 29.6% margin, even though Maryland has a big black population. There's still a lot of ancestral Republicans that will probably still vote for Democrats. So, Delaware, I'd say 9.7%. New Jersey, lean. Um, I'd say Ocean, Monmouth, Warren, Sussex. All the red counties move right. So does Newark, where Newark is. And then New York probably is likely, probably 7.8%. New York City probably shifts heavily to the right, but upstate probably moves to the left. And then Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island are all safe. Vermont, 30, I'd say 32 points. Massachusetts, 23.6. Connecticut, 12.8. Rhode Island, 14 points. New Hampshire, probably 7 points because all the Massachusetts people are moving up to New Hampshire, and it's making it more blue and less competitive. So Maine will probably give J.D Vance an electoral vote, and then the rest goes to Democrats. Maine at large probably 18, no, not 18, 8.6%, which would be a better margin, I guess. And that's it. 320 to 218. It's mainly, it would be 330 if I flipped Wisconsin, but I think Wisconsin, the widest of the battleground states, moves left. It's been shifting left. I don't think it would vote for J.D. Vance in this election. But this is my map. If you get offended, okay, please comment and please like the video. Bye.